Over the last few days, I've been around a pickleball pro that thinks about the game on a deeper level than I've ever heard before. Today I'm here with Roscoe Bellamy, and I've asked him to share the 3 skills that will take you from an average player to a great player. Roscoe has one of the best serves on tour, so here are his 4 advanced secrets to turn your serve into a weapon.
If you want to have a highly effective serve, you need to make sure your opponent's striking the ball behind the baseline. The reason we want our opponent to ball strike behind the baseline has to do with distance. So first, if our opponent is ball striking behind the baseline and they're trying to get up to the kitchen, there's a longer distance in between those 2 spots, making it more difficult for them to get up to that line. Secondly, if they're ball striking behind the baseline, it's gonna decrease the likelihood of them hitting an effective and deep return. There's more distance, allowing the ball to slow down, and the likelihood of a weak return is gonna be higher. So how do we do this? We wanna make sure that we're aiming in the back third of our opponent's court. If we're hitting in the back third of our opponent's court, our opponent's gonna have to let that ball come up in order to make contact, which is gonna be behind the baseline. If they don't let that ball come up, they're going to be rushing this shot and short hopping it, which is not an effective strategy, and you're likely gonna get some missed returns and some free points.
The longer you can keep your opponent back, the better chance you have of winning the point. That's why we want to throw off our opponent's forward momentum. When you can get your opponent to move sideways, 3 things happen. Number 1 is they have less chance of hitting a powerful return. So if your opponent's momentum is going forward, they're hitting with pace going towards you. So if you can get your opponent stepping to the side to make contact with the return, they'll have way less power than they otherwise would. The second reason is that if you can get your opponent to move to the side on the return, they'll be slower to approach the kitchen, which makes your third shot easier because now you have more options. And then the final reason is that if you can get your opponent to move on the return left or right, they'll have to have really good footwork. And if they've not practiced this footwork, they'll probably make a mistake, meaning that they'll be even slower to get to the kitchen, and your serve is just that much more effective. So with this in mind, there are a few places where you need to aim and a few places where you should avoid. The first place to aim is at their body. So whenever you hit a serve that goes towards your opponent's body, they have to make a decision. Either A, they move to the left to make contact, or B, they move to the right to make contact. Either way, they're moving out to make contact and not towards you, meaning a less effective return. The second place you could aim is on the far left side of the court. If you aim to the far left side of the court, they have to step over to the left to make contact, once again, meaning their momentum is going sideways and not forward. And of course, the same thing is true on the other side of the court. If you aim super close to this midline, they have to move to the right to make contact. But there are 2 places where you do not want to aim. The first is just directly to the right of your opponent. If you aim here, they don't have to move sideways at all. This is the perfect location for them. They can easily just hit that ball moving forward, and this is the optimal return for them. And then naturally, the other place that you do not want to aim your serve is directly to their left, because once again, they can hit that ball as they're moving forward. All of this is dependent on where your opponent is returning from. So if your opponent is standing on the far left side of their service box, then just remember you don't want to aim directly to their left or their right. Either aim at their body or force them out super wide in one of the directions so that their return is less effective.
The serve is the one shot we have full control over in pickleball, so we might as well use it to our advantage and go big. We want to make our opponent's life tough from the start, especially when trying to create the optimal third shot, which we'll talk about in a moment. When I say going big, what I mean is cranking up 2 factors, which is going to be pace and spin. There's a couple ways that we can generate pace. When I'm hitting my serve and my hand is coming through my shot, I want to make sure that I have a loose arm. This is going to allow my arm to come through kind of like a whip, generating more pace and power that's going to rush my opponent and create a better result. The second factor we want to focus on when hitting a big serve is going to be spin. Of course, we're using a wiffle ball, which is what we use in pickleball, so the ideal bounce is a bad bounce. If we're generating spin and we're coming from under that shot, the likelihood of getting a bad bounce on their side or a not perfect bounce is going to be higher. So if we look closely at some of the heaviest and biggest serves in the world, we will see that their paddle head is always going to be beneath the ball, okay? This is going to help generate that whip and spin to create a hectic serve for our opponent. When I'm hitting this serve, I'm making sure that I'm dropping my paddle head right before I hit it, and I'm brushing up on this plane here. And that's what's gonna give me that top spin to really throw my opponent off. By using a variety of different paces and spins, we can make sure that our opponent is not getting the same serve every single time. It's easy for our opponent to get in a rhythm if we're hitting max speed or max spin every single serve. But if we can hit a variety of different levels, for instance, maybe 75% pace and 100% spin, or 100% pace and 75% spin, it's gonna give us a different result, and it's gonna allow them to not get used to our serve. All right, so for this serve here, I'm gonna hit one with 100% pace and almost no spin, and it's gonna create that kind of line drive feel on this serve. So here's gonna be option one, which is that line drive serve. And then here's serve two, that's gonna be a little spinnier and a little higher with less pace. If we can keep them from getting a rhythm, they're gonna make more errors, they're gonna hit weaker returns, and they're gonna feel more uncomfortable hitting that shot.
You probably don't realize this, but you can set yourself up for an optimal third shot simply by where you choose to serve the ball. There are two examples of this that we'll walk through. First, let's say that I want to hit a third shot with my forehand. Well, it's quite simple for me to achieve this. All I have to do as the server is hit a ball that goes super far out wide and is likely targeting my opponent's backhand. So just imagine for a second you're the returner. If you get a ball that's landing over here to your backhand, it's really difficult for you to take this ball all the way across court. More than likely, you're going to follow the momentum and the trajectory of the ball and hit it back down the line or towards the middle of the court. And for me as the server, all I now have to do is step over here to take a forehand, or if you happen to return it to the middle, I can also take it as a forehand right here. It's really unlikely that as that returner, you've hit the ball over here, because to do that, you'd have to take all the pace off the ball, put it back in the other direction, take all the spin off the ball, put it back in the other direction. Just very difficult to do. But as this returner, if you're trying to hit this ball cross court and it lands short, it's probably landing somewhere over in this area of the court, which is the exact opposite of where you're currently standing, which means that any shot that this server hits to you, you're going to have a lot of distance to cover to get to that ball. And this all happened just because you hit a wide serve, knowing that you wanted to target your forehand on the third shot. Now let's say that as the server, I wanted to hit a third shot with my backhand, or maybe a ball that lands shorter in the middle of the court. How you achieve this is by serving super hard to the tee. So I'm the returner now. Imagine that a ball lands right here, and I'm standing here to receive this serve. It would be really difficult for me to step over here and then turn my wrist and aim that ball in this direction. Because of that, it's much more likely just for me to hit it like this and just try to survive and get this ball back into play. When I do that, I'm either hitting a ball that goes to the middle of the court or a ball that goes back across the court to the server's backhand. So you can tell that just by simply changing where you aim your serves, you can dictate what type of return they hit back to you, which means that you can then decide what type of third shot you want to hit just by hitting different serves.
Here's something crazy. The hardest skill for me to learn in pickleball was the overhead, and the Ernie ball machine completely fixed it. Not having a tennis background left me with a few problems. First, I didn't even understand the basic techniques of pointing towards the ball, loading your paddle, and turning your hips. But even then, there was still something so unnatural to me about the motion. The only thing that changed this for me was getting more reps. All you have to do is set the Ernie at the baseline, use these settings, and it fires constant lobs to you, so you can practice overheads until you master them. You can use my code Shea at checkout for $100 off your Ernie.
Because the server has to let the third shot bounce, they're going to be getting to the kitchen line after their opponent. This is why it can be a disadvantage to serve and why it's tougher to win points on your serve. However, this imbalance can be evened out by having really solid and consistent transitions. Try changing the way you think about the court. When we're at the baseline, this is going to be our defensive line. When we're at the kitchen line, that's going to be our offensive line. When you're playing balls from back here, we don't want to play super aggressive. Our goal is to establish common ground by getting up to that kitchen line and then working the point from there. So when we're at this baseline, we want to try and buy ourselves time by hitting slower shots and then not trying to rush into the kitchen, but get up there, establish ourselves, and then win the point. Once we've established ourselves at the kitchen line, we now are on an even playing field with our opponent. From here, we can work the point and play more aggressively.
The perfect third shot is one that you can hit every time. As Roscoe just said, on your third shot, you're just trying to buy yourself time to get up to that kitchen line. So because of that, you should not be hitting your third shots with the intention of winning the point from this one specific shot. Instead, we want to do two things: aim high and very, very soft. When you aim high, you give yourself plenty of margin over this net to make sure that your ball is consistent and not losing the point instantly by hitting the net. And when we go soft, we make sure that the ball is not going too far so that our opponents can take it out of the air and likely hit an overhead, winning the point immediately. Instead, aim high and soft so the ball is going to land in the first half of the kitchen. But when you do this, be careful because that ball is going to bounce high. In just a minute though, Roscoe is going to tell you how to deal with that as well. One crucial part of the third shot is that you want to make sure you're in the best position possible. And what we mean by that is standing behind the ball so you can make contact in front of your body. Very often you see people with their feet glued into the court on their third shot, and now they can't move to hit an effective third shot, and they tend to reach and hit balls that go super high and super far. Instead, be very intentional with your footwork here and take an extra couple steps if you need to, just to make sure that you're positioned behind this ball so you can hit a very controlled shot that's in front of your body, and that will eventually give you enough time to get up to the kitchen line.
You don't have to hit the perfect third shot drop if you can learn how to reset the ball effectively. As Shea said, sometimes our drops are going to be high and very attackable for our opponents. However, this is okay as long as you can develop a solid mid-court reset. If you look at some of the top pros, they don't transition in one shot every single time. Sometimes it takes them 2-3 shots just to establish themselves at that kitchen line. So a mid-court reset is when we're gonna be stuck in this no man's land here. That's an iffy position because there's a lot of room for our opponent to play behind us, but at the same time, there's a lot of room in front of us for our opponent to play at our feet. Even in a top pro match, when I'm in this position, what I'm thinking about is staying low, shutting down my body, and resetting that ball into the kitchen to get myself up to that transition line. My number one goal is making sure that I can establish myself at that transition line effectively so that I can play the point from up there. So when I'm in this position, I'm not trying to do too much. I'm really just rebounding and redirecting that ball in a safe spot, which is going to be the kitchen, so I can then get up to that kitchen line. Two very important things when hitting this reset. One, we want to make sure our lower body is low, but at the same time shut down. We don't want our weight transitioning from left to right. We want to be solid here and our lower body is shut down. The movement is just coming from a little bit of our arms here. The biggest myth I hear when people are talking about resets is having a nice soft grip. When you're in this position, you need to make sure you have a firm grip here because you're rebounding this ball and putting it back in the kitchen. In order to have control, you can't have a flimsy paddle or a flimsy grip. You need to make sure that you have a strong base and a strong grip here to put that ball back in the kitchen and then move forward.
While transitioning from the baseline to the kitchen, there are two things you can do to make your life a lot easier. The first thing to recognize is that going backwards is totally fine. Your progression from the baseline to the kitchen line is not always linear. You don't just get to hit a ball from here and then automatically get up to the kitchen line. Sometimes when you're resetting or you're hitting a third shot, that ball does go high, higher than you'd want it to normally go. And because of that, your opponent can hit it really aggressively. It's totally fine just to take a step back, maybe 2, maybe 3, and start working your way backwards to give yourself more time to react to the ball that's coming towards you. The huge mistake here is just trying to go up to the kitchen line no matter what. When you do this, you're inevitably going to hit a ball high, and because of that, you're going to lose the point. The second place where people often make a mistake in this transition zone is trying to be too offensive too early. As Roscoe said, this baseline is our defensive line, and it stays your defensive line pretty much all the way until you get up to the kitchen line. So when you're here in this midcourt area, even if you get a ball that's just slightly above the net, I know it's very tempting to just unleash on that ball and try to win the point, but the much smarter play is just to simply reset it and then slowly work your way up until you're finally here at this kitchen line. Then you can start to be offensive. Pickleball is a chess game, especially at the kitchen. There's this slow dance that's happening between both players where they're just waiting for the right opportunity to strike. One of the most crucial shots that will allow you to win this battle is a strong counter. Having a strong counter is going to keep your opponents on edge, letting them know that they can't attack you, or they might just overplay their attacks because they're so scared of your counter. Here are 3 tips to develop a very effective counter.
The first key to hitting a good counter is to always be ready and always have your paddle up scanning. So when I say scanning, what I mean is our paddle tip is gonna follow the ball. So if the ball's on this side of the court, my paddle tip's gonna be over here. And if the ball is in front of me, my paddle tip's gonna be right over here. Regarding ready position, I like to keep my paddle tip in front of me. I know some other players like to lean a little bit to their backhand as that covers most of your body. There's no right answer. I would say do what works best for you. Personally, paddle tip in front of me is what I've done and it's worked the best for me. I think more people who have a continental grip are gonna sit more backhand versus people with a more eastern grip are gonna sit a little bit towards the middle or forehand side. Having your paddle up in front of you is gonna be the first step of getting ready for that counter, but you can also watch your opponent's body language and just expect the ball to always be firing. So if we see them take their paddle a little bit back, our paddle needs to be up and we have to be ready. If they end up dinking that shot, well then we're not missing out because we just dip our paddle down and we go from there. However, if they fire from that position, we're already there ready, and that's gonna be the most effective way of getting ready for your counter. The second key to hitting a good counter, and I see this mistake a lot from people, but it's keeping your feet steady on the ground. So we wanna keep our feet grounded and we don't wanna jump or slide too hard when hitting the shot. When we do slide, and by sliding, I mean creating more room by taking a step to the right or the left, we wanna keep one foot pivoted. We don't wanna jump like this because what that's gonna do is make it really hard for us to time that ball, and our feet are not gonna be grounded there to get ready for the next shot. Instead of jumping when hitting this shot, what we wanna do is keep our feet down here, and we can take a step to the right or to the left when needing to slide or create more room. So if we jump when hitting this shot like this, we're not gonna be ready for the next ball that could potentially come back. We don't wanna rely on our counters as a one-shot winner. We wanna be able to counter and then win the hands battle, maybe if it takes 1, 2, 3 shots, however we need to be ready. One thing that's really helped me on the counters, especially with people hitting harder these days, is keeping my feet down and my lower body completely shut. So I'm just trying to use my arm here and I'm just trying to redirect the ball. I'm focusing on getting that ball down rather than just trying to go full power through them. So I don't need that extra pop from my legs here. I'm really focused on just getting that ball down and in front of me. If my legs are down and I'm hitting this counter, I'm gonna be ready for the next shot, grounded and with a still lower body, rather than off the court, not balanced, and my arm is extended or flopping somewhere else. So the third key to hitting a great counter is going to be keeping a short, compact swing. The reason it's really important to have a compact swing when hitting our counter is because of the short distance between myself and my opponent. I don't have time to take this big swing. I have to be nice, short, and compact so when they try and rush me by hitting an attack, I have minimal time to just block the ball and put it down on their feet. If I'm ready here and I'm keeping my elbows inside my body like this, I'm not gonna take a big swing. So focus on keeping this elbow inside and never letting your paddle tip cross the sides of your body. One thing that having a compact swing really helps with that I think a lot of people overlook is reload time. If we have a compact swing and we're not taking this massive swing, well, we're gonna be ready for the next shot after our counter. So let's say they speed up at me, I hit a counter that's nice and compact, well, my paddle's already ready for the next shot rather than taking this big swing, being off balance and not ready for that next shot.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you want more tips from Roscoe, you can find him right here. This is his Instagram. And if you have more questions for him, just leave them in the comments. He'll do his best to reply to them. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing, and YouTube really thinks you're gonna like this video next, so you should click on it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.